What if you could help others to find the power to heal themselves? Physically, emotionally, and spiritually.
When I started teaching my classes, it was in 2002, and I was just doing the past life regressions and contacting the subconscious part. But then as the time went on and we found how powerful this was and what we could do with it, a lot of the students began saying, you know, advanced past life regression doesn't really tell what it's all about. This is so much more than that. We think you should change the name. So it was a few years ago we decided to change the name to Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique. And this is the healing technique that we've now been teaching it, well, since 2002, that's 12 years.
What if you could time travel with them? Visit mythical places or angelic realms, other worlds, other galaxies. Help others to speak to their higher selves. You can. Dolores has taught thousands of people from across the world how to use QHHT, and now you can learn her method by going directly to dolorescannon.com. And don't forget to mention the discount code MORETALKS.
Established over 100 years ago, Watkins Books is one of the world's oldest and leading independent bookshops specializing in esoterica. We have the widest selection of esoteric books in the UK, and our friendly and knowledgeable staff are here to assist you in a unique ambience of our shop. So come and visit us in the heart of London as we're open every day.
The More Show is supported by Mindscape, Paranormal and UFO Matrix magazines, available for download on all major digital platforms.
If you like what you watch, then don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates on The More Show. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for new weekly television and radio shows.
The comments and views expressed on The More Show are those of the people that make them and do not necessarily reflect the view of Kevin Moore, The More Show, or this radio station and its affiliate or sponsors. This show is for entertainment purposes only.
Broadcasting from the UK and across the world online, you're now watching the UK's only alternative late-night talk show, and I'm Kevin Moore. For the next hour, I'll be covering subjects that will open up your mind and provide you with information you may have never heard before. My guest today is Val Clifton. Now, Val is the author of The Heartstone, The Dark Elves of Tane, and The Tree Spirits, all of which are Seth-inspired fantasy books for readers aged 9 years and above. The aim of the books is to encourage children and adults to embrace their own individuality rather than following the herd, and to be imaginative, creative, and confident people. The Seth Material is a collection of writings dictated by Jane Roberts to her husband Robert Butts from late 63 until her death in 1984. Jane stated the words were spoken by a discarnate entity named Seth. The material is regarded as one of the cornerstones of New Age philosophy and one of the most influential channel texts of the post-World War II era, other than A Course in Miracles and the Edgar Cayce material. Val Clifton, welcome to the show.
Hello, Kevin. I'm really happy to be here.
It's fantastic to have you on. I'm really glad to have you on, Val. You were recommended by the people that I contacted at the Seth Institute. And this is going to be a fascinating interview. Now, obviously, just for those who don't know too much about the Seth Material, just briefly tell the audience just a bit about the Seth Material and just how it affected yourself as well.
Yes, well, the Seth Material, as I think has been mentioned before, started coming through via Jane Roberts in around 1963. And she channeled Seth, and he's considered an energy essence personality. They're a very, very strong personality, I would say, because if you listen to his tapes and any of the CDs that are available, you can hear his personality and the way he makes jokes and he speaks in the modern vernacular. He's just feels like he's in the room with you. Wonderful personality. And the same when reading the books. When I read the books, you get a great sense of his personality. And when I felt that, I just really felt that resonating within me and knew that Seth was talking a language that I could understand. And I felt that this is something that I could really believe in, that I couldn't disprove. It was just a really wonderful experience to find something, because in a sense I'd been looking for a long time for something to believe in. I'd read the Bible from cover to cover. I was very religious in the conventional sense, and I sort of grew out of it, if that makes any sense. I totally respect it and think there's wonderful advice in the Bible, and certainly when you see it in context, and perhaps with the context of somebody like Seth, who does reference the Bible and does reference Jesus Christ and what it was all about, then you understand the Bible differently. And then I came to Seth and felt that I'd just taken that next leap. I had grown a little, that I felt that I was ready to take that next step to a more sophisticated form of, it's not a religion. Seth would hate to be referred to as religion. Indeed, he talks about his work as a philosophy, and that's how I like to think about it too, that it's a philosophy, and that he gives us this advice, and sometimes it's very challenging, but it does change your life completely. Once you've started reading the material, you find that many things in your life change. So, because Seth speaks about every aspect of life, you find him creeping into your meal times. You feel him creeping into bedtimes and all sorts of things, little whispers in your ear, and this could be better somehow. If I did things, I think I'll try it this way. And so that's how Seth sort of came to me, and how it's been impacting my life.
Yeah, I mean, of course we've had Richard Kindle from a previous interview, who was one of the original New York boys, who was there when Jane was actually channeling, doing classes as well. And it's fantastic to get your perspective on from someone who has come across the material. Now, I think you came across the material in 2001, I believe.
Yeah, that's correct. My husband, who's an American, he introduced me to the material. He began reading it when Jane was basically channeling it he read it in the late 60s, I think. But right then he was quite young and got lots of responsibilities. So he came across it again when we got together in 2001, and it resonated with both of us in a big way. And it's been wonderful that we together can study this material and live a life that sort of with a Sethian perspective to it.
Yeah.
So it is wonderful that I can do that, and we can do that.
Absolutely.
Yes.
When you
Yeah.
look at the amount of material out there with on Seth, and the amount of material that's probably not been released as well yet, it really is quite mind blowing. And you look at the people whose lives it's affected, who have gone on to do some huge things in life when it comes to influencing people. We were just talking off air there. Louise Hayes came across the material. Marie Williamson, who did the Course in Miracles books, and
Yes, Esther Hicks.
Esther Hicks as well. Yeah, when you look at
Yes.
that's right, Abraham and
Yeah.
material, and the more I've come across the Seth material, the more it resonates with me in the sense of it's really it's where the material for the law of attraction seems to come from as well.
Yes, very much so. And Abraham Hicks, is they call themselves, they do say that it comes from Seth, and they talk about how it all came about, how they went to investigate the material more, and then Esther was able to start channeling herself, but she channeled a group of individuals called Abraham collectively, and they give very much the same advice as Seth does, but I would say that Seth is a little bit harder read. You've got to spend more time studying probably with Seth. He's more of an academic study, whereas Abraham Hicks are sort of the people, and they give these wonderful road shows, and they're out among the people. So Seth is freely available to everybody, both on the internet and through books.
Right.
So a difference, but the same. Yes, same message, I think.
Yeah, it seems to be from the same group. Well, Esther says because there's interviews online where she talks about it. It's her channel is from the same group that Seth came from, or a group. As such, but it's almost, I suppose what she's saying, it's maybe from the same level. They're all maybe potentially on the same level, but there's lots of other channels out there with different material, yet it seems to be kind of saying the same thing in different ways, yet no one's quite said it as Seth did. I mean, it was almost revolutionary, wasn't it, at the time?
Definitely in the 60s, it was mind-blowing to speak of in that vernacular. Very different, and I think it raised a lot of eyebrows, and was something that people really couldn't conceive of. I think the concepts that Seth puts forward are so revolutionary and challenging that it would put people off. But nonetheless, it did draw many students to the Seth material at that time, and I think the 1960s was a time of change. I mean, we know the swinging 60s, free love, and definitely a different ideology was emerging at that time. So, I think a lot of the channels these days come under the heading of New Age religion, and I think Seth was very much the forerunner of all of these.
Yes.
And it stemmed from him. And as I say, I don't know about Esther Hicks and saying they're from the same soul group exactly. I'm not sure about that. But I would say they're all discarnate entities who are channeling, and they're all wanting to give their message to us in their own particular way. It's like everybody, we all have a point of view, and I don't think that it'll be any different in the afterlife either. There'll be many personalities all wanting to give us their point of view.
Their truth, yeah, that's right. Their version of their truth,
exactly,
yeah.
Yes.
Well, as you know, I channel, and that's what I get told quite a bit, is that this is only our truth. As far as we understand it, you have to make your own truth up.
Yeah, and Seth would definitely encourage us to do that. He gives us lots of advice on our earthly existence, but he doesn't give us all the answers. He wants us to use our intellect and intuitions to find those answers for ourselves, because one of us is an individual, and we're going to find things within ourselves that is not in the next person. And, that individuality is highly precious, and it should be precious to all of us. It's part of, obviously, who we are, but our creativity comes from this individuality, and that's an important part of what Seth teaches, our creativity. And he talks about us creating our own reality, which is, I think many of the channels do that, but it's our individuality, what we bring to it, that really makes it resonate and be different and unique and wonderful. And just, I think often these days we're all too scared not to follow the herd, but Seth would tell us, please be an individual, just don't follow that herd. You're caving in, you're just caving into to the dictates of those that probably want to control you. Yeah. So
yes.
yeah,
Well, there's a lot to say what you just said there, really. I mean, very briefly, I mean, we tend to go along with what we feel is our comfort zone, in a sense that, people, what they will feel towards us, we care what people think, don't we, sometimes? And like the Seth Material says, we should not. We should, it's such an empowering thing to be individual.
Yes, and I'm actually interested in what your channel tells you to do as well, or us to do, because it's usually a message for everybody. I'm going to interview you now. So do you get those messages about individuality and what advice they could give us?
Well, it's a funny old thing sometimes. You do these channelings and you do tend to forget what's been said sometimes. And I want to just make a point about that in just a second. But just going back to what you're asking there, really, I think what I'm channeling right now in this first book that I've done is it seems to be all about, trying to understand that it doesn't need to be so painful, that we do create our own reality, but we tend to create one that's very tough, very difficult, very painful. We always tend to do it the most painful way. I mean, I'm using the word painful there quite a bit because that's what comes out.
Yes.
That it doesn't need to be so, and that we create our own truth as well, as Seth has said about creating our own reality. It's it's a funny channel sometimes because it brings through a lot of different entities. And it's never just one, even though it calls itself the One, yeah? And that's a name that didn't come through to me in channeling. That's a name that came through me when I was conscious, and it was, I was, trying to really think, well, who is this? What are they? And then the name came to me, it's the One. But I don't think these names really have much to do with who they really are. It's just a collective. That's what it seems to be. And I'm interviewing someone later on today, an interview that will be out later this weekend, for Steve Rother, who channels the group as well.
Could you repeat that name?
Yeah, Steve Rother, I'm interviewing later on, who channels a group, well, called the group. That's what they're called. And
I see. Yes.
Yes. I can't really answer your question because I've not really had that's not really come through information like that just yet. It may have done, and I've forgotten about it. But that's the poignant part. It seems to be of the message so far, and that we need to come together and respect each other, love each other, come from an unconditional place, in a sense that we are all one. We all come from the same place. We all go back to the same place.
Yes. And Seth, his teaching is very much in line with that. You talked about we create so painfully, and Seth's advice would be create. Be like children, play. Yeah.
Yes, I got told that.
Play.
Yeah.
It's a big lesson to learn that we shouldn't be so serious and so stressed about life. If we can step back a little bit and enjoy this experience, we'll all do a lot better.
Well, that's exactly what I got told. I was told in the
Yes.
channeling that I was taking life too seriously, that there wasn't enough fun, and that you don't come down here to be spiritual and have no fun. That's not what being spiritual is at all. It's the opposite of it, actually, and that goes back to what you're saying, not caring what people think about you. It really is
Yes.
quite an important one. And I just want to get back to your stories as well. Now,
Okay.
because obviously we've got so much material to cover here, and I really appreciate you coming on. Now, you've always been an author, yeah?
Well, no, I've been in my last. I'm retired now, but I was a counsellor, relationship counsellor for a
Oh,
while,
right.
and I did teaching as well. Um, but writing something I've done. I've written poetry and books that I never thought to get published earlier on. But I finally did get a publishing contract with my first Seth book, the Heartstone. Well, it's not a Seth book; it's a Seth-inspired
Seth-inspired,
children's.
yeah, yeah.
Well, ostensibly children's book, but adults have read it too and said it's very suitable to be read by adults. But yeah, so it was only probably in 2008-ish that I got that publishing contract, and then I've written the sequel to it, Dark Elves of Tane, and uh, yes, and then my third book, Artificial Horizon, that I'd actually written back in probably about 20 years ago, but then I resurrected it and edited it and gave it a bit of a Sethian spin as well, although it's not a Seth philosophy in any way. It's a sort of a romantic political thriller. And yeah, so no, I haven't been an author all the time. I've done all sorts of things. I have 3 children that I brought up, and I lived in the Middle East for 22 years. And I've done all sorts of things, sort of
Yeah.
lots
Well,
of
were you as
hats
an
on.
working, as you say, your husband, your ex-husband was an airline pilot as well, so you've
Yes,
traveled the
yes,
world.
he was in the Middle East, and we lived in Lebanon, in Beirut,
Wow.
and in Kuwait, and also in Jordan. And I think my time in Jordan, I think we had about 14 years there. Obviously, I was on my own a lot, and I did lots of spiritual reading there. And I think that's where it really took hold of me. I was on this quest of finding a truth.
Yeah.
And that's where I read the Bible from cover to cover. And I had a friend who was a Jehovah's Witness, one of my best friends. She's an American. And I examined all of that. But none of those resonated correctly with me. And in the end, after doing all of this research, finally, and after a long time, came to the Seth material. But that would be right, because Seth would say that it comes to you when you're ready for it. And so, and it'll resonate when you're ready for it.
Yes, that's absolutely, yeah, absolutely what resonates with you, and it doesn't matter what that is. If it resonates, then that's what you must go with, and follow that part of you. Now, obviously, with your books that are inspired by Seth, I understand that it highlights the idea of bullying among school children as well. Now, just tell us about bullying and the Seth material in a sense.
Well, I'm not sure that Seth references bullying as per se, but it's sort of implicit in the material that you should have really great respect for each individual. And I think that's something that we do lack in society today. We tend to cast people out because of their individuality. If they're different, it's this herd thing all again. And if they're not following the herd or identifiable as doing so, they're often bullied. If you're a little bit different, if you're from a different race, or you speak differently, or you have a unique personality, these seem to be reasons to bully somebody. And I think it's absolutely out of order. And as I say, while Seth, to my knowledge, and I've read a lot of Seth, but I can't say I've read absolutely everything, but I could put my hand on my heart and say he would not condone it in any way. I think that's obvious. But no, bullying, I think it begins often in school as well. I mean, I was bullied at school because I'm actually half Spanish as well, and I had a Spanish surname. And this was a cause for me to be bullied. And it did take a toll on me in terms of self-confidence and things like that. And I've been amongst people who have been bullied too, and they are genuinely some of the nicest people because they don't have a lot of ego, I think. Whilst bullying is not the way to knock an ego out of somebody, but if we can get a little bit away from that ego, I think we'll all be better off, because it's this ego dominance society that's wanting us to be, oh, I'm the best, I'm the one, I'm going to have it, and they feel they've got to take it away from somebody else. In fact, Seth would tell us, you know, this universe delivers everything to all of us. That if you take it from one person, it isn't robbed. If you take it for yourself, it doesn't come from another person. There's plenty of abundance in the universe for everybody. And if we're creating our own reality, then it's there for us to grab hold of. You know, it's nobody else wanting that exact same thing. And so there we are. Bullying and ego, I think, go pretty much in the same category, but really in schools there should be more done about it. And I think if teachers take an absolutely practical view on bullying and say, you know, it just cannot be tolerated, it certainly will help. I feel very strongly about it. Probably tell.
Yes, absolutely, and I totally agree with you. And it makes you think as well, where are the parents in that case as well? You know, spiritually, where are the parents in a sense? You know, are some parents aware that this happens, and what do they do to, you know, to show the child basically that there's another way, that, you know, you don't need to come from ego in a sense?
Yes, indeed. I mean, Seth just mentioned the minimum requirements in our reincarnational lives are that we should be a man, a woman, a mother, a father, and a child. And I think that is where you have to gain the necessary experience of being probably a good parent. And that goes back to what you're saying, that good parents will teach their children to be kind to one another, and that bullying is out of order. And yes, I totally agree. What are those parents thinking about? They just shouldn't. I mean, we know that a lot of adults are bigoted, that a lot of adults hold points of view that they talk about in front of their children. The children, they may not obviously give those ideas to children, but certainly those subliminal messages are coming through to the children, and they pick up on that. Let's say that it's out of order. Yeah, parents should be good role models.
What does Seth say about family and children in a sense, and what we should be teaching our kids? Is there
Well,
anything that comes through?
he will say that we often reincarnate with the same family groups over and over, often because we need to work out issues that haven't been solved in one lifetime can roll over to another lifetime. And so basically, I think we've got to get it right. This is one of the places where Seth doesn't give us the answers exactly, but I suppose when you've reincarnated many, many times, you will eventually work out all those problems and issues and get it right. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And moving on then in one respect as well, because there's so much to talk about here, and I really appreciate you giving us the background there into. Oh, one other question I wanted to ask you as well is, obviously you use a pen name. What is the reason for that as well in your books?
Oh, my pen name is Raina Woods, and that's my grandmother's name. And she was probably one of the people. My first book is based around the realm of fairies, and my grandmother taught me about fairies, probably everything I ever needed to know about fairies and more. And it was one of my abiding passions as a child. So it was just a little, homage, whatever word you like to call, to my granny who's passed on. And although I know she's passed on, but I know that she's probably around. I often dream about her, and I often feel her presence around me. So Raina Woods.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, well, moving on just slightly here as well. There's so many hats that Seth wore as well, and we're going to get into some of these different areas. But just going back to what we were saying previously as well, in regards to the channels out there nowadays, it's almost like nowadays that people who channel, as I've experienced as well, don't need to go down as deep as what Jane was going to, where she wouldn't remember what had been said, because when you look at Esther Hicks or Crime, which Lee Carroll channels, or other channels out there, Steve Rother, Daryl from America that channels Bashir. Okay, well, Daryl's maybe not the great example in the sense that. The point I'm trying to make is that, we tend not to have to go so deep. Daryl does go deep, actually. But some channels nowadays don't seem to do that. And I've questioned that. Why is that? And some people have turned around to me and said, well, perhaps the way the energies are on the planet nowadays, it's a different way of doing it. The days of like when Edgar Cayce went down so deep, it almost killed him what it did in the end, in a sense. The stress did. What's your views on that? That people who channel like Jane used to, it doesn't need to be as deep nowadays.
Yeah, it would appear that way. I have personally been to and witnessed Esther Hicks, and she goes very quickly into trance, or whatever you like to call it. And I noticed how quick it was, but I'm not sure that it took Jane very long either, because I've read bits where it said Jane has been speaking in her normal voice, and one of the signs that she was going into trance was that she would take off her glasses and throw them to one side, and it was quite quick with Jane, I think. But I think initially getting it started, when they started with the Ouija board and then found that they didn't need it because Jane was getting the messages before it actually showed onto the Ouija board. It took a bit of getting going then, but I think once Seth became established, it was really quite a quick thing. But I still take your point. And I know when I was writing my books, I will say this, because some of the dialogue that came through, I felt that I was pulling it from somewhere, because I'd set out my story and planned it, but some of the dialogue you can't really plan out. But when it was coming through, I thought, oh, this is coming through. And having read my book back, I thought, I think I was channeling that. So I think it's available to everybody. And I think Seth does say that we all have this potential to actually channel. So I think as time is going on, we're all getting more in touch with our intuitive side, rather than just thinking you have to go into a deep channel somewhere to find out. So yes, I totally agree with you, Kevin.
Yes, absolutely, and it's just incredible that Jane passed away in 83, 84, I believe it was. Yet, they still want to communicate with us through channeling through other people. They still care enough to want to come through. It's as though there's a lot of unfinished business to do yet in the way that we as a species in a sense, and a soul evolving spiritual spirit as well, in a sense. We've not quite got it right yet, have we? When we come down to this level, obviously it seems we've forgotten our connection of who we truly were or where we truly came from, and they come
Yes,
here.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I totally agree. And I think that we won't get there until we all start listening to our inner selves, our intuitive selves. And, Seth talks about our inner self and our inner ego, which can greatly help us in everyday life. And with this, we can become in touch with who we really are. And we are a lot more than we appear to be. And I think while we have current systems of government and exploitation and other such things, it's not going to be conducive to us actually finding ourselves. I think we need a more sort of metaphysical type of life, a more spiritual type of life where we can learn who we are, because that's the next big journey for us, finding out who we really are. And we need to do that individually and also as a society and as a world. So I do agree with you. This material is probably coming easier to us because the part of us that is not located on Earth, so to speak, because I do believe, and Seth tells us, we have this inner self that is not located within us, physical selves. That self that is far away will actually try more and more to connect and bring us in to the spiritual side. So if everybody starts to do that, we'll find, I think, the world changing. Plus, Seth talks about Framework 2, which is a place where we get together as a mass consciousness. And as the mass consciousness, we make decisions about our lives, and that's somewhere that we could, and we may well be doing, as this mass consciousness, bringing this spiritual information more to the fore in our everyday linear lives, our everyday reality. So I think, the potential is there for us to becoming more spiritual beings, and that would just follow from what you're saying, Kevin, that we are finding it easier to channel other entities, people. I think one of the things that we do is to think that there's a big sort of veil or a big door between us and people who have passed on. But really, we could all be existing in the same space, but just in a different frequency.
Yes.
Yes. So when we start understanding that, and I think we are understanding it more and more, then that information is going to flow better for us. And that could be another reason why we're getting that information to ourselves.
It's interesting you mentioned that, obviously, because with theories on the multiverse nowadays and different dimensions and everything else, Seth talked about as well the idea that we we blink on and off throughout the day. We actually phase in and out of Earth, but we just don't know we're doing it, and that we're actually going into different dimensions.
Yeah, it is something he definitely tells us about, and he says that he says about himself, "I'm no more dead or alive than you are," and I think he references the point that we do blink off and on many times during a day, and during the times that we're off, as it were, we could be considered dead. So. I haven't worked all that out yet, but I've been reading quite a lot about quantum science, and this seems to be backing up all the things that Seth tells us about quantum science. And I think one of the things that's been mentioned is that we could be living in a holographic universe. And obviously, I think the holographs will have that blinking on and off effect. So I'm sort of going into realms where haven't got a very good footing, but certainly people like David Bohm, physicist, would say that we live in this holographic universe, and he gives the figures of the times that sort of blink on and blink off. And it's an interesting concept that we do blink on and off, because we cannot detect that blinking on and off. But it is an interesting part of
it is, because obviously this leads into the different frameworks that you were talking about. I mean, Seth talked about different frameworks, and obviously there were more frameworks that can be accessed through meditation or mental states of hypnosis as well. And he even talked about as well the idea that that when we look where there is nothing, and then we see, and then sometimes in a different reality, a different dimension in that same space, there is something. It's just we can't observe it. It's almost like when people say they've been abducted to. I'm not saying this is the case, but when people talk about they've been abducted to other planets, our telescopes observe there's nothing there. Yet maybe in a different dimension, a different frequency range, there could be something very solid and something very, very real there.
Well, absolutely. And Seth does talk about UFOs and flying saucers, and says often these events are individuals of another planet or whatever trying to come into our sphere, our realms, and we perceive them in this way, as flying saucers. I can't remember everything he says about them, but certainly that is possible. And he says about looking where there's nothing as well. I have, in the course of my life, noticed, I've often stared off into space, probably not a bad thing, knowing that Seth encourages us to do it, but staring off into space, I've noticed things like a footfall on a carpet, seen the carpet actually take the shape of a footprint, and there's been nothing there. But that would work if you think that there was somebody of another frequency having a little bit of a bleed through or something. And also, I've noticed my pets, cats and dogs, over the years. I'll often be in a room and their eyes will sort of follow something around the room. And I've even had a couple of dogs that barked at them and gave them their two pennyworth of what they thought of that person coming in the room. And my three children have also, as babies, they'd actually have a conversation and gurgle away to somebody up on the ceiling or off to the right somewhere. So I just wonder, as we get, and Seth does say this as well, that as we get older, we get further and further away from our home station, as it were, and we stop sending postcards back there. And we get sort of entrenched in the linear. So I think if we become more spiritually minded, we'll start seeing those things that the babies see, that we probably saw as children as well. Yeah, absolutely.
Incredible, isn't it? Absolutely incredible stuff. And obviously, conscious of just time right now as well. But getting into consciousness, I love Seth's work in this, and what he's channeled through Jane and what Jane's brought forth to the world. In the sense of consciousness creates matter, not the other way round.
Absolutely.
Now, this is just tell the audience a bit about this.
Yeah, well, consciousness creates matter. Generally, science would say matter evolves and a consciousness would evolve with it, or something to that effect. But Seth says, no, it's the other way around. The consciousness is what creates the matter. And if I can remember it offhand, it's quite complicated. There is something called consciousness units and electromagnetic energy units that are omnipresent, and they have the knowledge of everything. And when we have thoughts, they are completely aligned to our thoughts. And when we're thinking of, even if you don't consciously create your own reality, you do so unconsciously by our thoughts, feelings, and emotions. So they rush in, and the consciousness units turn into electromagnetic energy units, which then create matter. So that's a bit about the sort of mechanics of how things work in the universe. So that is how I would say it's created from the consciousness first rather than by matter first.
These are some of the subjects as well. Thank you for that. I mean, it's just incredible what you're saying. I mean, and these are just some of the subjects we touched upon as well, not in that much depth, but with Richard as well on the previous Seth interview. And one of the quotes that he said that they had in Jane's apartment was, you create your own reality. You create your own reality. And that's so powerful, isn't it? Because we don't want to own up to that sometimes, that I'm creating this reality. No way am I creating this hellish experience potentially. Do you know what I mean?
Well, that is true. And when you consider that, I mean, if we go back to before we are born, which Seth does reference this, that we choose our own parents and we set up challenges in our life to give us, to broaden ourselves, to give us more experience and to learn things. So when we think about choosing our parents and setting up the obstacles in life that we have done, if we fail to meet them and if our parents are not to our satisfaction, we really can't blame anybody but ourselves. And I think that's an important thing, to take responsibility for our lives and say, well, that's what it was. This is what it is now. And with this knowledge I have about conscious creation, I could actually do something very quickly to alter my life. I think figures have been bandied about, but I think something like 2 months is what it takes for a conscious creation start manifesting. And the more you do it, the more you do this conscious creation, the faster it will come through to you. Yes.
Right. Okay. So really, do you think our emotions play into that as well? In the sense that, is it always important to say to keep a sort of positive and joyful frame in the sense, and how would you do that when sometimes you feel like you've just got to go through the depths of depression sometimes to come out the other end?
Yes. Yes, definitely both things, but a lot of the time, I think we go through life in this very stressed manner that we spoke about before. We're worried about things and life gets us down. But if we could play a little bit more about, just know that we are here to experience, and if we can take a playful manner about things, it would help us. And obviously, Seth is very realistic, and he asks us to work through our problems, search for the root cause of our problems, and if there is a depression there, follow back that emotion. Where did it come from? I often think we think there's a hidden unconscious that we have to deal with, but Seth says no, there isn't. It's all available to us in the now kind of thing, in our conscious mind. There's nothing hidden at all. So if you can follow those emotions back and constructively go through them, it will help you to deal with those emotions. And often, he says, you'll trace them back and find that it all comes back to love, that perhaps this person has disappointed you in love, that you didn't get the love that you expected to get from that person, and it did a little bit of a job on you and made you depressed. And so follow them back and then try and realign yourself and get yourself in a good place, so that the majority of your day is spent in a joyful, happy sort of place. If you have an argument or an upset with somebody, okay, give it 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and move on. Give it what it needs. I can't say 5 or 10 minutes. Give it what it needs, and then get back on that happy vibe again, because ultimately it's what we're going to draw towards us.
Sure.
If we spend our lives stressed, depressed, then the universe is going to look at us and say, oh, obviously this person wants that, they're thinking that. I think it was Greg Braden, he says something about the universe can only say yes, it can't say no. So if you think about that and being depressed, and the universe observing that, well, it's going to say yes. Depression, you want depression? Yes, you're going to have it. But anyway, all the gurus and everybody sort of come out with the same message, you know, be as positive as you can be. And, you know, when we work through our problems, as Seth encourages us to do, and also within our family groups too, then we'll also be in a better place.
Well, this is so true. You know, one of my family members, he suffers from depression, and it's awful to see him in that state sometimes, because you do feel sorry for, you know, you can't help but care for people, even if they weren't my family. I'd still care. But having it in the family is more, you know, it's more in your face, that you have to, you know, really think about it sometimes. And it's almost like, well, you know, in the Seth teachings, then he's creating that reality, yet why do we keep hitting ourselves over the head with a hammer? Even though I could walk up to him and say, look, you've created this reality, which is a difficult thing to do sometimes. I wouldn't, because I would be more gentle than that. But in that sense of doing that, they're still not going to listen sometimes, because they're almost addicted to where they are.
Yes, I think there is an element of that too. And that's sort of a mode, what I call a mode thing, that you have a certain mode that you operate in, and eventually it becomes comfortable to you. So, oh, I know where I am if I've got that warm blanket of comfort around me and I'm depressed. And not that, you know, I was a counsellor before, I know how much help is needed for people who are depressed, but nonetheless, there comes a time to move away from it. You've given it all time that you need, or it needs, and try to get back into that better space where your life will get better. You'll change your mode. You'll go from depression mode to happier mode. And
well, that's it. And if you embrace that teaching, that even if it's not your truth, just give it a go. You created this reality, so surely then the opposite's true. You can uncreate it and create something anew.
Very, very much so. Very much so. Yes, I think that's really good wisdom that you're giving there. Yes.
And just to remember as well, as Seth would say, that we're learning our ABCs here on planet Earth. So, you know, keep it playful.
Yes, and that's one of the things he does tell us, that I presume that, you know, we're not very high up on the evolutionary scale. He talks about us being in kindergarten here and learning our ABCs. So one of the reasons we can learn our ABCs is to work better with our own energy and matter, because energy and matter are sort of synchronous anyway. So, I mean, I suppose it's likening, well, if I remember, when we think about something, there is a delay before it manifests. So during this delay period and its manifestation, we have time to think about it, and we have time to view the result of what we've created. And this time for thinking will eventually make us better creators, I believe. And so learning to use our own energy wisely, and that goes for everyday life as well. Don't overreach yourself. Don't do more in a day than is right to do. I think we have to respect our own bodies. It's something we don't often do. We drive our bodies to the limit sometimes. But Seth says things like, yeah, go for a walk, but don't do it to the point where you're exhausted. Enjoy a walk. Make every aspect of life a little bit more enjoyable. Yeah, important to know that we're learning our ABCs here, and we can do a better job. Learning to create our own reality consciously will help us do a better job on that.
Yes, absolutely. And anyone who's going through any tough periods right now, watching this potentially, or has gone through struggle as well, just to know that, I'm sure there's some of us out there, and I've been guilty of it as well, where I've just not wanted to be here anymore. I've wanted to just go back home because this is just too tough. But when you come across teachings like this, where think of it even as a philosophy in a sense, where if you can create your own reality. I can't stress it enough. You can get out of the depths that you're in, and see life from such an amazing position in the end. And as well, some of the Seth teachings in regards to when we pass on. So for anyone that's lost someone as well, in a sense, or that's had a loss in their life,
yes,
we
yes, well, yes, go on.
No, go ahead.
Yes, well, Seth doesn't want us to fear death. He will tell you that death is an illusion, and that we go on to other spheres of experience afterwards, of our choosing. So death is not something, we should really sort of agonize about. Personally, my own little bit of way of thinking of it is that we're in Earth game now. I think others have said this, but this is something I thought of myself. But Earth game, so a bit like if anybody remembers the Krypton Factor, you have to go through challenges and general knowledge and all the rest of it. So this is Earth game, and there comes a point where we've probably learned or experienced as much as is required or we need to know for this existence, and we will move on. So Seth says death can be very easy, and we, again, to reference your channel, that sometimes we make this very hard for ourselves, believing that we are supposed to suffer and die, but we don't have to. We can just maybe even think, right, it's time for me to die now, and maybe go to sleep one night and just move into another realm. Seth doesn't say that, I'm saying that, but I think he hints that it could be that easy.
Absolutely agreed there. Absolutely, and I always remind myself as well that I am a soul in a body having a human experience, that where I reside is in a realm where time and space does definitely not exist. And Seth would say the same, I think.
He would say exactly that, that we are a soul having a human experience, that everything that we do in linear is something to expand us, to make us greater than we are. So he also tells us that if we could remember who we actually are, we would understand that we are much bigger personas than we think we are, and we would understand to some extent that we all had a hand in the creation of our universe and our Earth and everything in it, but we've allowed ourselves to forget in order to have these experiences on the holodeck, if you like. It's quite a mind-blowing concept, really.
Yeah, absolutely, and it really is, and we're just touching on the surface here of the work that Seth and Jane have done. And how many books did Jane actually channel in the end? Was it 14 plus?
Well, I think I had trouble actually getting the number down. I read Norman Friedman's book, the Hidden the Hidden Universe, I think it is, or he actually mentions says he compares Seth to modern quantum scientists, and it's a fabulous read. And I think he talked about there being 14 books, but I know that I've got more than 14 books on my shelves, and there's always new materials come forward in terms of the personal sessions and things like that he held with Rob and Jane. And I don't know, there's a large number, kind of a numerous amount of channel material of Seth, but it's definitely out there. And I think, as Rich Kendall mentioned, it's held at Yale University Library, and it's well thought of in academic circles. Yeah. And in terms of being loaned out, it's always in the top 10 every year. So very popular material indeed.
Oh yes, and, yes.
Yeah, very, very popular material. Yeah, I mean, it's good to know that that Seth Material has that academic backing. It's thought highly of. That means a lot to me, and I'm sure it does to Seth, and definitely to Jane, because Jane was, in her books, it says how she was forever wanting to show that it's authentic, that it is not part of her psyche, that is independent from her, and to have that validation must have been wonderful for Jane.
Oh yeah,
absolutely wonderful.
Yeah. And I wonder what Jane's up to nowadays as well.
I wonder if she's watching the Kevin Moore show and saying, "Oh, guys."
Well, I'm sure she gets a chance to watch a lot of different stuff, and who knows what we do when we go over. I'm sure of one thing though, that we don't sit idle. I'm sure there's so much expansion that you want to do when you've crossed over,
yes.
Or gone back home.
Yes, indeed. But there again, I think I read somewhere that if you feel that you need a rest, you might even rest in a tree for a number of years and just veg out in a tree, as it were.
Yeah.
Or take a little gap year, as it were. But definitely, we're not going to be lazy for the rest of our lives. We've got lots of spheres to explore and to go out there, and
well, that's it, because when I see the rest in peace people write down, sometimes I'm thinking rest in peace. I'm like, well, I don't, I can't agree with that, because I think it's the soul's just gone back to where we come from, and there's infinite levels to go to, and I think it's just as exciting just more real than the existence we've got now.
Absolutely, I think it will be, and I think as we progress as creators of our own reality, we'll be able to be sort of let loose on other planes of existence where we won't do any damage, as it were. And so when we've sort of graduated from Earth School and Earth Kindergarten, we will go on. And I think it's wonderful that, Seth says, we have limitless life. And I think is it Jonathan? I'm not sure which channel it is, but he says something. No, it's Michael. Sorry, I always want to call him Jonathan. I don't know. Michael, who channels. You've had him on your show, Michael.
Oh yes. I'm sorry. Yeah. Let me just ask.
Yes, I can't think of his surname.
Michael Ray.
I think Joseph is his channel, I think. But one of the things he says is that we think that there's nothing, and he says there's no such thing as nothing, and I think that's a very important point. There's only isness, I-S-N-E-S-S, isness. And when you think of our existence in those terms, that there is no nothing, then you can kind of look ahead and see down the line or across the line, because Seth says all time is simultaneous. You look sideways and see another life, and you're doing something else. So it seems a lot more coherent if you think that there is no such thing as nothing.
Yes, because we all, the chap you're talking about, Michael Ray Care, Ricker,
Yes,
and
yes,
and
yes.
I'm just holding his book up now because I've got him coming on tomorrow from here to infinity. So he's on tomorrow for an interview for his latest book. Funny you mentioned him actually. There is no nothing. We all fear, don't we, that void, that blackness. That when we go to sleep, sometimes we wake up and we think, well, there was nothing. So obviously, maybe when I pass, there will just be blackness, nothing, and there will be nothing. But I think we have to remind ourselves that sometimes we're conscious of the nothing. so this blackness, we call it, there's consciousness behind of the observing of it as well. So
Yes.
to know
Yes.
that there's more than that to carry on. The consciousness carries on. I think it's of great warmth and great encouragement, isn't it? In our evolution process.
It gives you a different aspect on your life. You're not trying to cram everything in before you die, kind of thing, or acquire so many possessions and money and everything before you die, because you know you're going on to other existences, and in a sense, and even if you were going to die, I don't know why you'd want all those possessions, because I've so often said, you can't take it with you.
Well,
So
we see that a lot,
yeah,
don't we, with people, how they're so, oh, look at the car I've got, or look at the laptop I've got, or look at this latest, this or whatever it may be. And, what, I was going to ask that, what does Seth say about it in this respect? But, when we go past that, when we have everything, in the moment of complete darkness, when we go through situations where we lose everything, we lose our
yes,
possessions, we lose our family members, whatever, we're losing it all. It's only at those times when we get to ask ourselves sometimes, who am I? Who am I really? If I'm not my job title, I'm not my possessions, I'm not really my name, who is this consciousness looking through these eyes?
yes, indeed, it does make us go within ourselves and look backwards. Um, or inwards is a better word, because sometimes we're always looking outwards, but Seth tells us to look inwards to our psyche, and he considers it's the new frontier to be explored. And indeed, that if we get good at it, we can even travel to other planes of existence, to other worlds via this manner. So it is an important place we can develop, definitely within our psyche. And I'm probably going off the question you asked me,
No,
but
no, not at all.
uh,
No, the idea of traveling to other realities through our psyche and the development of it was an important part of the Seth material.
yes, it is an important part of his material. I mean, he does encourage us to get in touch with our psyche. And I can't tell you everything just offhand about it, but certainly dreaming is an important part of our psyche that he encourages us to get to know more about our dreaming selves, and to keep a dream journal, and to record everything. It won't necessarily make any sense over a couple of weeks, but over months and years, there becomes a coherence in your dreams. And you see, you will be dreaming the same dreams, things that will be giving you messages, things that speak to you about your life. And it's a very important part of our lives, and something interesting, or at least I find it
Oh
interesting.
yeah, oh
And
yeah.
in terms of dream, is that there are people that Seth calls speakers. And these speakers are a very well-educated body of people who've kind of dedicated their spiritual life to talking to people in their dreams and teaching them things. And you can actually ask for a speaker to come and talk to you in your dreams. And also, in the same manner, you can ask for therapeutic in our dreams. Um, if you have a bad back, or suffering from an illness, you can request that therapeutic healing be given to you to help with that illness. And these can take place in the dreaming state. So, the dreaming self, Seth would say, is as valid as our physical self. So, a lot of emphasis there on dreaming, and an important part of Seth's teaching too, Seth's philosophy. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely, and dreams and emotions, and it's all interlinked, isn't it? Where we can keep this journal and examine some of the root causes of emotions and stuff, and
yes, absolutely. I mean, emotions are going to come through in the dreams strongly too. I can't tell you a lot about it other than they will affect certainly the ideas that we hold about ourselves. Will come through in our dreams. I mean, if we hold a very negative point of view about ourselves, then this can come through in our dreaming. So again, more reason to keep ourselves in that joyful, happy place, so that we can get a better dreaming experience, which will help the whole self a lot better. But there are things in dreaming that are a little bit out of our control, as I understand it and believe it, that information will be given to us to help us, even without requesting it. But certainly if you request it, it will be a sort of a free will gesture that will be responded to. And I think it's very nice. I mean, I do ask for therapeutic healing sometimes if something's up with me, or I've asked for the speakers to come too, and I think I've witnessed them in various guises. They often do come through as a teacher in an academic setting for me, and I've learned things that way. I've also remembered climbing up a huge mountain like Everest and getting to the top and then finding that I find that speaker there and getting some information that way. So it could come through in any sort of guise that would seem to resonate with you, because we all have our own symbols for understanding things, and it's our individual experience that counts.
Yes, it is, absolutely, and in the sense as well of obviously issues that we go through when we incarnate onto planet Earth. Obviously, sometimes some people may feel unjustly towards other people who have committed horrible acts upon them, or whatever that may be, whether it's whatever it may be. Yet we really have to come from that space, as Seth would say, of when we're ready to really forgive, because that is a big part, isn't it, to forgive in this lifetime? Because if we don't face up to the lessons, that they only probably chase us into the next reincarnation. Would you say?
Absolutely, that's going to happen. Seth does categorically state we will come back with those family members, we'll reincarnate with them to try and work on the issues that haven't been resolved. So it's in our own interest and everybody's interest to work those issues out and to be forgiving. And I think forgiveness is very central to Seth's teaching as well, as it is with probably every right-minded guru, that if we can get past our own anger, I think that that puts us in a good place. And when we reach out to other people from that good place, they're going to respond to us in a better way. That rapport that we're seeking with them maybe will come back. But when we take a sort of I'm going to sort of go take my bat home and sulk in a corner kind of attitude, nothing ever gets solved, nothing ever gets addressed. And I think if we come from a good place in our hearts, and it is hard, no two ways about it, and sometimes when a dreadful thing has been done, it's very hard to forgive. And I take my hat off to those people who forgive someone who's murdered their loved one or something. I can't imagine that is so wonderful that they can do that. But I suppose you go through the phases of rage and disbelief and grief and everything, and then you come out the other end as Seth says, trace those emotions back to the beginning, and maybe you will understand that we're all connected. We're not separate. We're not different. We're connected, and we come from a place of love, not from a place of hate. So
Yeah.
the more we forgive, the better it's going to be. The more we love and put it out there in the world, the better it's going to be.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
and as you've said, we incarnate with the same soul groups most times. We've known these people before, whether the roles are reversed. One life you're the mother, one life you're the daughter, whatever, and you're still with the same group, and that we also have counterparts as well. Just tell us briefly about counterparts.
Yes. Well, counterparts are other individuals we might come into contact with in the world that are experiencing earthly reality in a way similar to ourselves. Not exactly the same, because we're all individuals, but you tend to know when you meet somebody. There's a great resonance between you, and it's like, oh wow, you just feel it. For instance, Jane and Rob were counterparts, and they had that wonderful bond between them. And I think that's quite true. Couples can quite often be counterparts. So yes, counterparts are indeed can be somebody you're either related to, or somebody you're married to, or indeed a stranger you've never met yet. But certainly you'll feel the resonance with the counterparts.
Well, we are coming to the end of the interview here. I'd just like to ask you, like I do most guests, but with yourself, what do you think is one of the most important teachings of for yourself in the Seth material?
I think the most important thing is that you create your own reality, and the thoughts and feelings, emotions that you have will affect that reality. So it's important that the way we think of other people and the way that we think of us is very positive. And that way we're going to create a better reality will draw that towards us. I mean, when we think about people in a kindly way, then that is the way they're more likely to react to us, and you'll feel that warmth and closeness to them. But definitely, we create our own reality and keep it in a good place, and just be as happy as you can, as much of the time as you can, but don't avoid looking at problems. They're important too. But definitely Seth is a joyful individual, and he would want us to be that way too. So I think Seth has the last word on that.
Absolutely. And just one question that's come to my mind that I've got to ask you as well. Did Seth ever come through with Jane and say that he will not be channeled through anyone else except for Jane?
Yes, he did say that. And although there have been people that claim that Seth has come through, to them, it would be more likely their own personal Seth, because I've certainly never encountered anything that comes close to the Seth material, and I think I've read most of it. So it's their own personal Seth, I would say. Those other channels that claim to have brought Seth through. So I think Seth is very unique, and somebody who's brought us great clarity to our everyday lives.
Yeah, it's interesting, that aspect of it, that it won't come through anything but Jane, and in the books as well, it talks of Jane in a different name as well, because it's known Jane as a reincarnation as a man as well.
Yes, exactly. Rupert is the name that Seth calls Jane by. So I believe that Seth and Jane and Rob had a Scandinavian existence, I think, where those names were Seth actually was incarnated at that time, and it was quite a long time ago. I can't just bring it to mind, but I think that's where the names came from. The Rupert name came from anyway. So that's an interesting little aspect of Jane.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I'd just like to say, Val Clifton, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a complete pleasure.
Oh, you're so welcome, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to put Seth's teachings a little bit out there. I did my best to do him justice, but I think people really have to read the material and see the CDs and the DVDs to get a really good flavour of him. So thank you, Kevin, very much for having me on the show.
Well, we've come to an end on tonight's show. Don't forget that you can watch and listen to all our past interviews on the More Show's official YouTube channel. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for new daily shows. You may also find out more on all past and upcoming guests on the show via themoreshow.co.uk, and do like us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates. So until next time, be safe.